Hi, hello, and welcome, everyone. Very nice to have you all here. Welcome to our Global Leadership Speaker Series. This is the last month that we have speakers talking about the global leadership. And we have amazing speakers this month, such as Dr. Amanda. The Global Leadership Speak Series is an initiative from the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning and the Associated Dean's Office. This event focused on a myriad of topics that impact leadership in the global space, and the events were recorded and or transmitted during the months of April, May, and June. So before we get started, I'd like to share some information about our center. The Center for Global Partnerships and Learning provides GSEP students with various services ranging from publication support, certificate program, access to GSEP Academic Journal, the Scholarship Without Border, and a few other services such as cultural celebrations, info sessions, and workshops. So now let me introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Amanda. She is a visiting professor at the GSEP and international consultant. Dr. Amanda is a scholar practitioner. She has been in education for more than a decade in multiple industries. Additionally, she has been teaching in graduate programs for global leadership, organizational leadership, human resources management, and international studies. She oversees education initiatives for ERA Broker and collaborates with international organizations for global assignments for Wickra Consulting. Moreover, she has designed courses for the University of Maine, Presque Isle, and the National University. Dr. Amanda is an advisor on multiple international overreach and research committees, creating strategic partnerships. She has traveled extensively internationally and interviewed global leaders for her contributions to literature about foreign policies. And as an advocate for international leadership, her research spans across global competencies, international relations, education technology, and global policies. She earned her EDD and PhD at Pepperdine University. Most recently, Dr. Amanda was one of the recipients of the inaugural postdoctoral fellowship at the Graduate School of Education and Psychology. She was appointed to the board of visitors and was recognized as an inaugural 40 under 40 honoree at Pepperdine University. So today she will guide us through this intense and very meaningful discussion, international reflections, in fact, on developing an open mind for global leaders. Dr. Amanda, thank you so much for being here with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Good evening, everyone. So nice to see you all. I am Dr. Amanda Wickramasinghe. Most of you know me as Dr. Amanda. I see a lot of my students here. Delighted to see you all. Before I begin my presentation, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning for hosting this event, and of course for allowing all of us to gather as a community and learn from each other. So thank you all, and of course a special thanks to Sue Ellen, who's one of my students who asked me to present tonight. So Sue Ellen, thank you for creating that collaboration. So tonight I want to share with you lessons that I've learned throughout my years in international affairs, and of course why an open mind is so necessary for a global leader. So with that, let me share my screen and we'll get started. Bear with me just for a second. So as Sue Ellen mentioned, I'm currently a visiting professor at JSAP, but beyond Pepperdine, I'm also an international affairs advocate and a global leadership enthusiast. I've been in international affairs for many years, and that has really helped me and guided me in being a professor as well, because I'm able to essentially bring my experiences and demonstrate and share them with my students in hopes that I can spark some additional interest for them to pursue international affairs and get to know cultures and learn more about the world. So with that, I want to begin with just sharing some pictures. One of my mentors once told me a picture can speak 1,000 words, and I am such a firm believer of that. So I've been to over 35 countries. I've seen a lot of the world. And certain countries I've been there multiple times, and I've learned a lot about culture. I've learned a lot about norms. I learned a lot about competencies. And what I found through all my international endeavors is that the common denominator amongst all the skill sets that you need to be an effective global leader is an open mind. So I'm going to walk you through some of the lessons that I've learned throughout the years, and I hope that I can spark some interest for you as well in terms of pursuing and learning more about international affairs and global leadership. So let me share a little bit about these pictures. The very first one in the corner is my wonderful husband and myself when we were in Sri Lanka for a wedding for a close friend and a colleague. And we are wearing traditional attire here. So I'm wearing a sari, which is very common for a Hindu ceremony. And my husband is wearing a sarong, which is a very common attire for a male to wear for a Hindu ceremony. And as you can see in the background, there's beautiful candles and flowers. If you've ever been to an Indian wedding or a Hindu wedding for that matter, you'll see that it's very rich in culture and tradition, and there's so much delicious food and so many beautiful colors because it showcases an important celebration. The picture right next to that is in Japan, in Tokyo, at one of the Buddhist temples. And I took this picture because it's important that when you are in different global settings, that you're very respectful of the religion and the religions that they practice. The picture right next to that one is in Vieden, Luxembourg, one of my favorite places in the world. And I took this picture around 6 o'clock in the morning. And as you can see, there's a castle right there. And that is from my iPhone. It's not any special camera, but you can just see the beauty and just the gracefulness of it. And the picture right next to that is when I was in the Baltics, in Lithuania. And again, you can just see the beautifulness of the city. And of course, just a beautiful fresh day. Now, the picture right at the bottom with the bridges and the arches, this is in Scotland. And you might, for those of you who are Harry Potter fans, this might seem familiar. This is the Glenfin Viaduct in Scotland where Harry Potter was filmed. And I took an early walk in the morning and I captured this, or my husband captured this picture. And this shows just the importance of understanding all the different areas of a country and why they're celebrated. And the final picture right next to that one is last week when I was in Sweden. I was co-chairing an international seminar with my colleagues from Uppsala University based in Sweden. And we were celebrating a 20-year research project between Uppsala University and Sweden, and Colombo, Sri Lanka, excuse me. And those are some of my colleagues in the picture. And right behind them, you will see all of their publications that are most recent, especially focusing on the advancement of women and children. So I wanted to share these pictures because it just kind of tells you a little bit about my journey in terms of where I've been and why I've learned these lessons. And as I said, I'm such an advocate for international affairs and global leadership. So I encourage all of you to travel and see the world as much as you can as well. So with that, let's begin. So why is global leadership important? Well, first and foremost, what is global leadership? I can guarantee you, if you ask that question from your fellow colleagues, friends, peers, you will more than likely get a few different answers because global leadership means something different to all of us. To me, global leadership is the leader's ability to essentially navigate through complex situations internationally, be able to lead effectively from a cross-collaborative perspective, and be able to guide different markets, and the ability to suspend judgment, especially when working in international settings. Now, why is global leadership important? Well, if you think about your phone that we use, we all depend on our phones for scheduling, for making phone calls, and of course, helping us manage our daily task, right? If you look at your iPhone, more than likely, the iPhone is designed in California, but maybe the parts that are needed to design the iPhone are from China, and the packaging is probably from Europe. Similarly, for those of you who drink coffee, such as myself, I am such a coffee drinker, more than likely the coffee is from Brazil or from Costa Rica, the coffee that you enjoy every morning. I'm sharing these examples with you because it demonstrates how interconnected we are as a world. We all need each other, we're all interdependent on each other, and I think that was certainly exacerbated as a result of the pandemic. It's important to recognize that we are all interconnected in this larger global environment. Now, companies and leaders often talk about the concept of going global. And that has been the center for so many conversations amongst thought leaders, academics, CEOs, teachers, and practitioners. What I recognized through my experiences is that becoming a strong global leader with a strong global mindset and an open mindset is beyond just expanding into global markets. It's really about thriving in those global markets with an open mind and being culturally competent, and of course, practicing global intelligence. Now, most recently, a scholar that I follow, Pankaj Germat, published an article through Harvard Business Review, and he asked the leaders, how well do you really understand the world beyond your own borders? So why is that such an important question today? What do you think? I want to hear your thoughts.
Dr. Amanda, there is a question in this chat. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, absolutely.
Once more.
How well do you really understand the world beyond your own borders? Why is that such an important question today?
If you wanted to answer that question, you can just unmute yourself and collaborate.
Yes, please feel free to share.
Hi, Dr. Amanda. Hi, everyone. Nello here. Wanted to share my my brief opinion. Is in this global economy where anything is possible, and we purchase products, as you mentioned, that are shipped from all over the world to our front door. I think understanding the global leadership and global economy and how everything is interwoven is critical. Migration is another big factor. People are able to move, to travel more, to live in different countries, different cultures. It's extremely important to know how to interact and to rely on the strengths of each culture and each team member for the success of the entire organization.
Thank you, Nell. That's a great answer. And you're absolutely correct, because global leadership and having an open mindset is beyond just the skills and values and behaviors. It's really your ability to interconnect yourself, adapt accordingly, and be able to adjust your own frame of thinking so that you can thrive in an international setting. So leaders who have an open mind are able to really, in essence, investigate the world, recognize a multitude of various perspectives, communicate ideas, and take actions accordingly. Mastering the art of having an open mind is beyond just understanding the necessary skills. It's really about your ability to adapt, adjust, and associate with others who are unique and different from you. Now, the route of going global, it's no longer reserved for executives or global leaders specifically, it's for everyone. It's an essential activity that helps us not only for decision-making, but of course to always to recreate and co-create as you work across borders. And having an open mindset implies that you're open to discovering cultural differences, that you want to take risk and be able to move outside of your own comfort zone. And you have to recognize that the world is shifting, the world is evolving, and that recognizing world conditions, opportunities, and challenges are necessary, especially as a global leader, as you develop an open mind. This is a lifelong process. It is not something that's done overnight. Therefore, my advice to you is open your eyes and seek out new experiences, because that's really one of the best ways to create an open mind. So with that, let's continue on. So the intersectionality between an open mind and global leadership. Oftentimes, when I share the importance of developing an open mind with my students, I often get the question, well, I'm a local leader, so why does this matter to me? How does this imply to me? And my response to them always is leadership is leadership. We want all of our students to be successful leaders. But there's such an intersectionality between an open mind and global leadership, and between the global and the local areas. Because even if you are a leader in a small business based in Los Angeles, more than likely you're importing and exporting, your clientele might be global. Therefore, there's plenty of global application for you. So you have to recognize the intersectionality and the connectedness there, because an open mind is necessary for all leaders, especially leaders who are a local leader entering a global space. And as I mentioned early on, we're all interconnected in this larger world. Therefore, there's nothing called global leadership only for individuals who work internationally. Rather, it's for everyone, because we're all dependent on different nations. We're all dependent on our colleagues in different countries, and even our clientele that we serve are international now. Therefore, global leadership is for everyone. So with that, what are some of the important characteristics of a global leader? Well, through my experiences, I've discovered the following. Cultural intelligence. Leaders who have high levels of cultural intelligence, they're able to adjust and adapt to different types of global settings. They're also able to, in essence, interact with other leaders from various backgrounds and find common ground. As a global leader, you have to know how to operate in complex, dynamic, and competitive environments. And that's never been more important than now. So you have to acquire cultural knowledge, cross-cultural skills, and cultural mindfulness. Your ability to understand various cultures, such as how people express themselves, how they express greetings, how they say hello, how you give feedback, all of that is part of cultural intelligence. And in some cases, you have to know how to disagree appropriately and how to agree appropriately. Then there's curiosity. Curiosity is an essential component, especially in global leadership, because you have to be curious about the world around you. If you read memoirs or leadership publications from some of the most renowned global leaders of this world, you will often see that a common element they all share is their love for learning and their love for curiosity. You have to be open-minded, and in order to do that, you have to be curious. What about cultural flexibility? Cultural flexibility allows us, in essence, to enter new markets and environments, but more than likely what you expect is not what's going to be. Therefore, you have to be culturally flexible. And I'll give more examples of this as we go on. Then you have to embrace diversity. Diversity is all around us. And once you embrace diversity, you're going to be open to new types of experiences, which is a critical component of a global leader. Languages. If you look at research around linguistics, you will often find that understanding multiple languages is actually going to be a skill set that's required for the new generation of a workforce. Multicultural fluency is essential to thrive in the next generation of global leaders, because as I mentioned, we're also interconnected. Learning a new language is only going to add to your skill set. So everything from Mandarin to Arabic to Spanish, if you get a moment to learn a new language, I highly encourage you to do so. Ambiguity. Oftentimes as a global leader, you're going to be in positions where it's not going to be something that you're comfortable with. Rather, you're going to have to learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's going to help you learn new experiences and, of course, cultivate growth. When you're placed in a situation where it's not familiar, more than likely, you're going to learn to adapt. It's going to take some time, but you will eventually learn to adapt. And that uncomfortableness is only going to help you grow as a leader. Above all, be sure to communicate effectively, especially when working in a global environment. You have to know how to communicate effectively across language barriers and understanding different types of cultural nuances so that you are effectively communicating. And then what I find the most compelling, especially as someone who is an advocate for international affairs, respect, trust, and acknowledge everyone that you work with. So these are the important characteristics that I am a firm believer that you need as a global leader. What I found through all of these characteristics, the common denominator is an open mind. So let's talk about this further. So why is an open mind relevant to a global leader? What are your thoughts? Can we put them in the chat? Learn about others. Thank you, Dr. Azia. Absolutely, Davey, breeds creativity for solutions.
There is one before from Angela, withholding judgment and seeking understanding.
Absolutely, withholding judgment and seeking understanding. Keep learning and growing. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Helps establish trust, respect, connection, and communication. Absolutely. That's a very good point.
Another point that was before, Dr. Amanda, just to help you, adapting to cultures' ways as you were immersed in the way of life. That's a very good point as well.
Absolutely. Thank you all for taking a moment to share that. And all of your answers are very compelling and absolutely true, and certainly necessary for a global leader to cultivate an open mind. Now, I'm going to share with you some of the areas that I found really compelling just through my own experiences as to why an open mind is important. And here's what I've discovered. When you practice an open mind and you're receptive to new situations that are different from what you're used to, you develop the following areas. You're open to new ideas. You're open to new cultures. You are open to getting the job done in a different way. You have travel experiences. There's new cuisine and unknown settings. Now, let's break this down one at a time. Let's talk about new ideas. As a global leader, when you are open to new ideas, you're willing to be more considerate of creative and innovative approaches. You're going to be open to feedback, and by being open to feedback, you're able to improve your performance and improve upon your processes. Being receptive to new experiences, especially in the unknown settings, can help you be more proactive in new situations. And then, of course, you have to admit when you're wrong. So I'll give you a quick example. About a year ago, my colleagues and I were creating a certificate for a university in Nigeria. And my colleagues are brilliant women. They're all very well qualified. And as we were creating this certificate, we had the entire roadmap and the learning environment and the learning outcomes, everything designed perfectly. Then when it was time for us to meet with our colleagues from the university in Nigeria, we realized that everything we've done has been completely wrong. that their idea of a certificate was vastly different from what we had in mind. And we essentially had to go back to the drawing board and recreate the entire certificate. What I learned from that process was that although I may have an idea in terms of how things should be done, it's not necessarily the same idea that someone else will have. And the fact that I was open to listening to them along with my colleagues gave us a whole new idea in terms of how to create an effective certificate. Now, in addition, I've also realized when you are receptive to new ideas, you're going to be willing to learn more. And you're going to be willing to hear about different points of view. And that's going to help you foster and create and rebuild good relationships. Because relationship capital is essential, especially as a global leader. When you are working across borders and working cross-culturally, and you're going to be working with people who have different viewpoints from you, if you are more receptive to listening to them and understanding where they're coming from, together you will create new ideas and essentially find pathways to co-create, if you will. Other ways to be open to new ideas is honestly by reading journals, looking at different leadership magazines, articles, and international memoirs. All of these areas will help you be more open to more continuous learning. Now, let's talk about cultural intelligence. Why is this important? Before you embark on any sort of international endeavor, I want you to think about the following. Regardless of whether you're based in Beijing, New Delhi, or here in Los Angeles, get to know the team or the person whom you will be working with. Identify their interests. Ask them about their cultural norms. So for an example, when I was in Sweden last week, I learned how they say hello, just simple things. They don't say hello or hi, they say, hey. That's how they greet someone. And they say thank you by saying tack så mycket. That is how they say thank you. And when I went to my international endeavor in Sweden, several of my Swedish colleagues were very impressed that I took a time to learn more about how to specializely to how to greet and how they practice norms there. And it was almost like they were taken back that I took the time to do that. But by doing so, I was able to build rapport with them, and they realized that I cared to learn about their culture. In addition, another example I learned while I was in Sweden was that they balance work-life balance. They have a very strong mindset in terms of when they should work, why they should work, and the importance of integrating their family lives. So I noticed in my conversations that they take their summers off. So if you are planning to work in Scandinavia, keep that in mind. In Sweden, they take summers off, so plan your time accordingly. Furthermore, while I was there, I also realized that Swedish parents get 482 parental leave. So between the two parents, they get 482 days off to spend time with their child. So why was this important to me? Well, I recently became a mom, so I wanted to learn about work-life balance policies around the world. And while I was in Sweden, my colleagues shared with me that when they had their babies, they get 482 days of paid parental leave. And I thought that was an important policy for me to recognize, especially as someone who is studying different cultures and learning about work-life balance policies. Another example, if you want to work in the Caribbean, keep in mind the Caribbean has what they call an island mindset. So things are a little bit more on the slower, they move a little bit more slow and they move at a different type of pace, but that is their culture and we have to be respectful of that. So when you are working in different types of settings, do your homework and learn about them. Last year, I was in Colombia. And while I was in Colombia, I spoke to many different leaders and learned about the Colombian culture, which is very rich in heritage and customs and traditions. But they often shared with me that when tourists come to visit Colombia, that they often associate the Colombian culture with what they see in the Netflix shows. And they want to move away from that. So what they shared with me is that the Netflix shows and some documentaries showcase Colombia in a negative connotation, but that's not the case. The country is beautiful, the culture is incredible, and everyone is so nice and welcoming. So I realized that media has a huge implication in terms of how culture is perceived. And the Colombian people that I met through my travels there shared with me that this is not how our culture is. And welcome to our culture, this is how it actually is. And that was a great learning process for me because I realized media and culture are two different things. Furthermore, my personal advice to you as you go on this journey of creating an open mind, always be respectful. Above all, when it comes to cultures, be respectful. Okay, here's my third element to you. Getting the job done. Keep in mind, when you are pursuing international projects, different countries have different methods and processes to complete a task or a job. A wonderful leader once told me that in the US, this is just a brief example, in the US, we use dryers to dry our clothes, right? But in most countries in South Asia, they don't use dryers. They wash their clothes and they hang them outside and they let the natural sunlight dry the clothes. Now, this may seem like a rudimentary process to you, but keep in mind, when you dry clothes in the sun, not only are you letting the UV rays of the sun kill the bacteria, but it's also an effective method to dry clothes. You're not wasting energy and time. Now, how does this translate to leadership? Well, let's say that you're leading a project with multiple partners from various countries. If one partner says, well, we want to do it this way, and another partner says, no, we want to do it this way, you as the global leader must be willing and open to identifying a new pathway. Why? Because it might be a more efficient pathway, it might be cost effective, and it might create new opportunities for you to essentially continuously collaborate on various types of projects. Don't think that your way is the only way. That is not a good attitude to go into, especially for global settings. You need to be open-minded to creating new approaches and understanding various types of methods to essentially get the job done. So I can tell you with a lot of the international projects that I've been a part of, the method that I approach projects with is not the method that we deployed in terms of getting the project done. We had to identify all different ideas amongst all the different partners from various backgrounds and find one common pathway for us to effectively manage the workload. And that actually helped us build relationship capital and effectively establish rapport and build trust. And throughout our years together, several of my international colleagues, we continuously learned and worked together because we knew we were open-minded to different approaches and new methods. Moreover, I want you to think about this important element. When you are working in international affairs and creating an open mind, suspend judgment. Most countries may not have the same resources that your home country may have. Therefore, it could be, the latest tech, new gadgets, whatever it may be. You need to realize that just because they don't have the same resources, it does not mean that their ideas don't have merit. That's one of the best lessons I've learned throughout my international affairs and international projects. Several countries where I've been and have worked may not have the same resources, but they have such incredible ideas and innovative thinking approaches. And I had to learn that although they may not have as many resources, their ideas have the same value and the same merit. In addition, I've noticed in developing economies and emerging economies, places like medical clinics, they may not have the same software and the latest tech that perhaps countries in the Western parts of the world may do. However, they are still so focused on being patient-centric that they ensure that the patient is always well treated and taken care of. And in essence, that goes back to the larger umbrella of getting the job done, because although they may not have the same resources, they know the fundamentals, and ensuring that the project is completed is what's necessary. So realize that as you cultivate an open mind as a global leader, the pathways that you're used to may not be the same pathways your international colleagues are used to, but that's okay, because by being open to it, you're going to be learning different types of approaches, different methods, and realizing that there's a lot of innovation, even in the places where they have the most limited resources. Comments before I continue on? Anything you'd like to add based on your experiences?
Dr. Amanda, I thank you. This information has been great. I think it's really important for us to always remember that there are these amazing similarities and commonalities, and that sometimes we've let go of those in the United States in order to get to what we think is progress. So in some cases, you know, when you're talking about certain things in other cultures, in some ways, we didn't think certain things that they were doing that we did were sufficient for the world we were trying to get to. And so sometimes it's just a reminder of things that work well, even when we think we've made some progress in some places. So you're talking about laundry. We used to hang laundry out in the United States. It used to be the only way to do it. Some communities still do it, but there's also an interesting community around that in certain areas where it takes place. There's a lot of information that goes back and forth between people who are hanging out laundry that have connecting yards. It's the way information flows in certain communities, and it's the way they get things done. And so I think it's important that we also pay attention to the things that we've let go of when we think about the global community in order to get to what we think is progress. And then maybe we can regain some wisdom from those things as we engage in other places.
Absolutely, Sharada. Thank you so much for those beautiful comments. And I must say, the example of the laundry, I learned from a very wise leader here at GSCP. He will remain unnamed, but he is definitely wise. Okay.
Dr. Amanda?
Yes, please, Nelly.
Time for a quick. I keep smiling at this laundry example because in Romania we did it. I didn't even know back then there's another method to dry your laundry. It was the only way, and it worked. I think the beauty of what you are doing is I feel invited to challenge my assumptions. And one way to challenge my view of the world and my assumptions is to surround myself with people that are different, that behave differently, that eat differently, that believe differently. If I only surround myself out of insecurity with people that are like me to validate that I'm right, there's no growth. Any decent leader would do this. And thank you for reminding about the importance of just challenge our assumptions, stay open-minded, and maybe long-term, I was laughing with Jam and Scott Samara in class one day. I sent him a joke about solar technology, and I said in Romania, we used solar technology in the 80s. And they were like, you did? And I said, yes, we used to hang our laundry so the sun can dry it. So it worked. Anyway,
Thank you, Nelly.
I'm done with my comments.
No, those are great comments. Thank you so much. Okay, continuing on. Why travel? Well, first and foremost, traveling helps you learn, explore, understand practical knowledge, which is of course essential. Now, keep in mind, reading is an important piece of understanding travel because reading can help you learn about history, customs, and traditions. However, it is a whole new experience when you are actually on ground and you see something for the first time. Case in point, the Taj Mahal. So if you ever see the Taj Mahal, it is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And once you read about the history, you will be even more inspired and influenced. And there are a million pictures of the Taj Mahal around the world, but nothing can replace actually seeing it in person. For those of you who have gone on our international trips through GSCP the past few years, I'm sure you feel the same way. for an example, for those of you who went to Egypt, when you see a pyramid for the first time, that experience you almost can't explain. Therefore, it's important for you to travel as much as you can. Now, keep in mind, travel is much more accessible now than it was before, and you can easily travel on a budget. The experience can be the most fruitful experience you'll ever endure. And you'll also, through traveling to a different country on a budget, you're still going to be able to understand and gain the full experience of it. So there are ways to make it cost effective. Throughout all of my international experiences, I've met people from all walks of life, leaders, to individuals who are college students on gap years, to couples, young couples pursuing international trips, to individuals who are new to the professional industries, and of course to ambassadors and foreign policy scholars, and just everyday people. And what I've learned is there's so many ways for you to travel, to see the world, and really experience the full essence of discovering a new culture and a new experience. Now, I must caution you, traveling and seeing the world is not getting an all-inclusive resort and hanging out by the pool. Although there's a lot of greatness to that, that's not what I'm trying to say here. So when you are traveling, make sure you're fully immersing yourself in the culture and learning about the culture. Now, media versus reality, I've noticed throughout my experiences that oftentimes how a country or culture is portrayed in the media is often not how it actually is in reality. And you really only understand that phenomenon and that philosophy once you travel to a new destination. You'll notice from their cultural norms, their traditions, their history, it's often quite different from what the media is actually portraying. So that's an important piece to keeping an open mind, because when you have an open mind, you're able to discover, oh, this is how it actually is compared to what I was taught it was. And you'll see the connections there in a more brighter manner, and it's going to help your learning experiences. Cuisine. So this is one of my favorite parts of travel, I must admit, trying the food. And you'll notice through your international travels that food is often associated with different types of customs and traditions. There's special foods and delicacies and so on and so forth. So when I was in Estonia, I discovered that they eat bear meat as a celebratory dinner. And that was a new concept for me. But fortunately, I was with my husband, who is a complete adventurist. And we learned that bear meat is actually a famous tradition that dates back to their history and to their kings. And that's often, the families eat that, especially when there's a celebration going on. Similarly, in Sweden, they have reindeer meat. And that's also part of their customs. And in Australia, they have kangaroo meat. And if you go to Florida, there is, of course, alligator meat. So it's important that you try these different foods and recognize them for what they are. Try to understand the history and the historical underpinnings of the food, why they're often part of celebratory events. And above all, what I've noticed is don't make faces. So when you eat something and you don't necessarily fancy it, it's natural for us as humans to just kind of make a face, right? Like, I'm not sure if I want that. Maybe it's not what I really prefer for my palate. But I've learned through my years, never make a face, because that particular food or that delicacy is very unique and customary to that particular culture. So you never want to be disrespectful. So never make faces, especially if it's something that you don't necessarily fancy. The third item that I've learned through cuisine is that most of the world drinks tea and coffee. That is part of our everyday routine. And that is something we all share in common. And I've noticed even coffee in Colombia, the coffee is in a small little glass like this, but it's so strong. The minute you drink it, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm awake. But in the US, we have more lattes and cappuccinos. So, but it's the foundation is still the same. It's part of our everyday experience. And I encourage you all, when you're traveling and exploring new countries and cultures, try all the different foods. Ask them, where do you normally eat? Don't go to the touristy stuff. Try to go to the local restaurants that are owned by people who live in the cities and who's cooking. Whoever's cooking in there is probably cooking food that is known to their family and has roots back to their backgrounds and is part of their culture. Try different delicacies and special foods. It's going to help you learn and understand the importance of cuisine to that particular culture. And then in closing, I want to encourage you all, as you travel and pursue international endeavors, the #1 rule is always be safe. Be aware of your surroundings. It doesn't mean that you should limit yourself in exploration, but just be careful in terms of being aware of your surroundings and know where you're at. When you're traveling around the world, you're going to be in ambiguous situations. And I see that Dr. June is on this call. I've learned more about ambiguity through my work in Belize with Dr. June than anywhere else, because oftentimes you're going to be in situations where it's going to be new to you. It might not be something you're familiar with, but you should be open to it and be receptive to what you're going to be learning. Always continue to explore. There's no age limit to exploring. Continuously explore, because every decade of your life should be a new adventure. All of these different elements will help you be a lifelong learner. And together, all these different ingredients will help you create and cultivate an open mind. Now, as you see global leaders around the world, and if you read memoirs or if you read their biography, what you'll learn in terms of what makes an effective global leader is they all have an open mind. Through all the global leaders that I've interviewed, from ambassadors to scholars to academics to CEOs who lead multinational organizations, they all have shared with me, Amanda, if you want to do this, you have to have an open mind, and you have to be okay with failure, and you have to be able to essentially practice resilience and be able to get back up and continuously move on. So if you look at Ban Ki-moon or Angela Merkel or the Pope or the Queen, they all have an open mind in terms of how they lead, why they lead, and what they want to get done. And with that, I encourage all of you to explore the world. I hope my strategies through my international experiences have sparked some interest for all of you. I continue to encourage all of you to be continuous learners. And in addition to just see the world, seek out adventures, seek out people who are different from you, get to know different individuals from various backgrounds and ethnicities, because that's one of the best ways for all of us to learn together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amanda. Do you have a few time for questions, to open for questions, comments?
Yeah, I had a question or a comment.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Sure. Anyway, hi, Dr. Amanda. How are you doing? we made it through Belize from a lot of places. The one thing I noticed, and probably it's in the last few weeks maybe, but the reaction to humor, that maybe someone might speak in a different way and how it can be taken in different ways. So maybe I've learned something about you have to kind of be careful, because people are from different cultures, and so you have to kind of say different things, and you have to be careful what you say. It could be said something by humorous, but to you it wasn't humorous, you know what I mean? So I just noticed that one thing you were talking about, having an open mind.
Oh, absolutely, Dr. June. I am very careful with what I joke about when I'm in a national setting, just because I would never want to offend anyone. And I'm probably a little too serious of a person to joke around, but it's important to recognize that what I might find funny may not translate the same way to another setting. Therefore, it's always good to practice caution, like Dr. June said, and learn and do your homework in terms of what is appropriate behavior in a new country, so that you never want to ever offend or disrespect anyone. But excellent. I completely agree, Dr. June. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. June. Thank you, Dr. Amanda. Dr. Amanda, I just wanted to add something to what Dr. June said. For me, the experience is also asking how people wanted to address some things. For example, very small things, the way you say, let's go in other idioms, in other languages. For example, here in Colombia, we were talking with a lot of people. In the end, I found out that just saying vámonos is not polite for them. There are other constructions also in Spanish that is considered more polite. Instead, in Argentina, that's very normal to do this kind of thing. So it's really have this open mindset, but also playing like, in kind of humble, in a humble position of asking more than saying, and checking their micro expressions. If you see that, oh, I said that this way, should I ask if I said something wrong? Paying attention to people's micro expression, how they react to what you say, those are also very, very good. And another thing that is in the chat that I wanted you to give you the opportunity to maybe talk a little bit about, there is a question about how can someone become an avid world traveler. So there are various ways you can fund yourself, but you can also be involved in other projects as you do. So maybe you could talk a little bit, how do you engage in projects that allowed you to travel the world and know more about other cultures?
Okay, thank you for that great question. So absolutely, most of my projects have come through just simply networking. And for those of you who have been in my classes, you know that I always advocate for networking, getting to know your colleagues, of course, attending conferences. A majority of my international work has come from networking and being on advisory committees, and of course, advising on various types of projects, etc. And I was born in a very small island in South Asia. So from a very young days, my parents encouraged me to learn about new countries, cultures, especially as we migrate to the United States. So it was part of my life, if you will, from a very young age. And it was just a natural transition for me. My husband, who's on the call, is certainly a world traveler as well, has lived in several different countries. So it was part of our DNA, if you will, in terms of pursuing international affairs. But for those of you who are looking to seek out opportunities, my suggestion is even simply just network with people from different companies, join associations. There's so many international affairs organizations that you can join. Look at foreign policy projects that are available through the UN, the World Bank, and that's going to create opportunities for you to engage in international work. In addition, even your colleagues in your cohort, we have some amazing students from so many different backgrounds. Seek out friendships with your colleagues from various cohorts and within your own cohorts. Find ways for you to collaborate together. I can tell you one of the projects I'm currently on is based in Amman, Jordan. And I brought one of my colleagues, Hadil Antawabi, and I introduced her to Dr. Gabby and the center, and we were able to create a certificate program through that. And now that program has been in effect for almost 2 years. And it was simply through just having conversations. So seek out good friendships, foster new relationships, join associations, be part of communities like this where you can be an active participant, because you never know what types of doors will open up for you. And as I mentioned, travel is more accessible now. It's, I believe 20, 30 years ago, it was quite limited and not everyone could travel. But now there's so many pathways for you to pursue international travel, and you can do it in a cost-effective manner too.
There is a comment in the chat that I would like to recognize because it kind of complement what you just said, Dr. Amanda. There are multiple nonprofits and opportunities to do missions with doctors that give their time and products to other countries. So you can also engage. I think that this kind of mission or other missions in nonprofit or in international organization is also another good way to go. So I just wanted to recognize that.
Absolutely. To Davy's comment, Sue Ellen, the Doctors Without Borders, it's a great association. There's, of course, scholarships that are available to students through the Fulbright. If you're interested in pursuing international work, Fulbright is a great space for you to apply. And of course, other associations.
Yeah, Dr. Shakma had this experience with another organization related to, I think it was United Nations in the beginning of his career, and he spent like 2 years in another country on projects. So those are great ways to go without paying out of your pocket, and maybe also being an employee and receiving some money to while you build up this type of experience and collaborate with the world, right?
Absolutely.
Do we have time for one last question or comment before we close, Dr. Amanda? Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So does anyone else have another question or comments before we close? Dr. Brahmi, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. I really, really enjoyed it. I just want to share a little plug for the library, that we have some really great resources on etiquette, international etiquette, for specific countries around the world. There's an amazing book called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands that has a summary of like a 3 or 4 page summary of, etiquette with etiquette suggestions for 60 different countries. And so we have some really fun, and it's really fascinating too, learning this stuff. So just wanted to share that that's available to anybody who's interested.
Thank you, Dr. Brahmi. Can you type the title of the book again for us? That's great.
So
Any other
quick
Yep.
question.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Stella.
Dr. Amanda, for people who work with undergraduate students, some who are in community college, community colleges, where, the thought of traveling just outside of their geographic location is kind of frightening because many of them haven't left that area. How would you suggest us starting that conversation with them about even being curious about seeing a different part of the world? I mean, because not all of us work in industries where we're going to be traveling in different spaces. Some of us do work in educational spaces where part of our task is to raise a new generation of leaders. And hopefully those will be leaders that are global in mindset and action.
So Charlotte, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's, and actually, in fact, I had a conversation with one of my colleagues who works in K through 12 the other day about this. I think it starts with the teachers, as much as we can, to incorporate international experiences in the curricula. From having them research about current events, perhaps doing projects about different countries, simple things like that. If we can incorporate that into their daily tasks that they do in the classroom, it's going to help them generate new ideas and spark some new interest about, I didn't know the culture in South Korea was like this, or something to that effect, right? So just kind of building in simple tasks to help them realize and learn about it. By doing so, you're going to spark curiosity. And once the student is curious about another country or a culture, more than likely they will want to learn and pursue it further. But I think it starts with small steps, having them do assignments around international current events, having them research cultures, perhaps having simple things like a potluck where everyone brings a different dish in terms of representing their culture and what they eat at home, and giving them exposure. If you look at child psychology, more than likely children who seek out different opportunities as an adult, a lot of those opportunities are influenced from a young age. So if we give them experience, more than likely they will pursue it. Now, in terms of community colleges and such, I know in our systems, we're always in a situation where we're restricted with budgets and what kind of projects we can have. But I would encourage them to network more, because by doing so, they will identify a pathway essentially through, it might take some time, but identify pathways for them to collaborate, which might give them an option to travel and learn about international experiences. I hope that answered your question, Charlotte.
It did. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amanda. Thank you all of the participants here collaborating, asking questions, interacting. That's an amazing session, Dr. Amanda. You brought an amazing content, amazing examples. In the name of the center, I would like to thank you so much for doing that for us. This video is being recorded, and it will be available for all of you or other people in GSEP students to go back and review the recording and Dr. Amanda's presentation. And it's a great opportunity to learn and evolve more in global leadership to complement our doctoral programs. So thank you so much for doing that. I also wanted to recognize all of you for being here, giving the time to do that. Dr. June, our Associate Dean, who is here with us today. And I would like also to remember that we have more 2 sessions this month. I hope you all can join us. One is in the 21st with Dr. Brown, and another is on the 28th with Dr. Ji-Sung Kwok, who is here with us today watching this presentation. So please join us with our future presentations. There will be also in this content of self-awareness, spirituality. So we have a very good content to discuss and go more in depth. With that, if we don't have any other comments, Dr. Gabby or Dr. Brahman from our center, I think we can close the session, and I wish you all a very good evening. Enjoy with your family, get some rest, stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Amanda.
Wonderful information, Dr. Amanda.